right, we're on.
Here we are.
What's going on? I'm missing
ready for
you,
another
man.
day.
Oh boy! So this is late at night for me. I'm not usually awake at this wee hour of the morn.
Welcome
Getting
to
old.
my world, Mike. I normally do the late night show.
So I'm just gonna try and stay together. Hopefully,
It feels so different. I'm so happy to be here now.
okay. Just slow down now, because we know how you get. You just turn
Hang
into.
on, haven't even had my coffee yet.
I am worried, a little bit worried, but so I've just come back from the reason we try to do this slot is it seems to work well. You've got a clear space there on your end, and I've just come back from my community groups. So just had a little bit of Christian fellowship, and just driving home, and I thought, just going on our conversation the other night, it'd be good to talk more about the Christian life, and this is certainly a big part of it. We've spoken about a few other related issues. We've been talking about church unity lately. So, that's kind of related. One of the things, though, is just church life, church fellowship. And I feel like I've got a little bit to say about it. I feel like it'd make an interesting discussion topic. I feel like people listening in on us might be able to resonate with some of the stuff we've gone through and the stuff, just trying to be real about it and yet find some good theological sort of outworkings at the same time. What I have in mind is coming into Christianity, I was not a Christian, neither were you. We didn't really do church. We went, for your, if anything, well, we kind of, I suppose, grew up in a kind of Christian-y environment in South Africa. So there was that. But when you actually got serious about Christianity, I can honestly say I never experienced any of that prior to, my first week of Christianity. It was always a very... you go to a formal church service, you don't know anyone, you just walk in, walk out. So it was nothing like anything I experienced after I became a Christian, where all of a sudden I'm wanting to find out what the person's name is. I'm staying for more than just the service, and then actually getting to meet another Christian. That all of that sort of started happening only after I became a Christian. And even the very scant... I think it would be the same for you. I mean, we went for Christmas, Easter. I don't know, maybe a little longer than that.
We went through a phase in our childhood where, so the house we grew up in, Mom definitely, had a Christian worldview. But I think the thing that she really came to understand after our conversion was, the grace of God and the gospel. Yeah. So I think there was a strong emphasis on the holiness of God, fear of God when we were growing up.
Right.
And it had some effect. It wasn't, I'm not saying we grew up in a Christian household or it was a consistent thing, but for example, when we were hiding our drugs, some of our friends were cutting holes in the Bible and stashing their weed in there.
Yeah. And you had this weird kind of, don't cut the Bible, man. Just leave the Bible out of it.
Just don't go there.
Yeah.
Hey, why did you need to do that?
Yeah, that's just weird.
And some of our friends, our druggy friends, would go from acid tripping in the dunes to seances, and we'd just be like, nope, don't want to go there. Thank you. So,
yeah. Exactly.
So it did have that sort of impact. Yeah. But generally speaking, everybody was a Christian, nobody was a Christian. So when I became a Christian, I went to my non-Christian friends and I was like, hey, do you guys want to look into Christianity as well? And they're like, what do you mean? We are Christians.
Yeah.
But just the night before, they'd been, consistently keeping up the habit of, getting off of their faces.
Yeah.
Slam, never been to church, never read their Bible, don't care about anything, but they are Christians.
Yeah. So very similar for anyone listening from the States to the Bible Belt areas of the States, except, as I've come to know that vibe, it's actually very different as well. So it's hard. Anyways, that's a whole nother episode right there, the South African enigma. But
it was new.
So I remember coming into Christianity. I think the closest community I had experienced was, that deep, close friendship around that drug community that I had sort of developed over the years. And, it's a real community. You are, you're hanging out all the time. You get to know each other really, really well. You become really good buddies. There's honesty, there's an openness, there's a doing life together thing. So community is a real deal in the drug world. And I remember coming into Christianity and just being, I was a classic case, textbook charismatic born again guy, just going for it. and just loving every second. But I remember my wife and I was managing a bar, or at least a nightclub at the time, and my wife was a bartender. We weren't married yet, but so we weren't operating in any kind of church circles. And when we came to a very, very, very different culturally, even though it was a charismatic church, it was supposed to be contemporary, but it was actually just like, I don't know, synth 80s or something.
Exactly.
And when 80s was not cool. Yeah. Before the 80s was cool. So it was just kind of, I don't know, everyone was trying to be contemporary, but it was just not wearing a suit, essentially. It formed its own culture. And we struggled. We struggled with fitting in, I suppose. That was the first thing. But we'd just press on because who cares anyway? So I remember we'd literally take our piercings out. We'd literally, dress differently. We'd just, try to just tone it down and fit in because there was something more important in view. We wanted to experience this community. But
and that's right. I mean, it was a good. If you see something so valuable in fellowship, your own self-expression is secondary to that.
Yes. So that's fine. If everyone does that, no problem.
But you think you had it tough.
Yeah. Well, you had it like
Listen
good.
Listen to you complaining about how it's not like cool enough for you. I went to a Presbyterian church. I was the only dude under 70. Where about 5 of the congregation of 30 could actually sing, and they sang hymns that were so obscure that nobody knew how to sing them, to an organist who I think had actually died already, but was still managing to play the organ. So, it was, but again, the same thing. I was just very happy to be there. If I look back on it now, the preaching wasn't great. I had no peers, no contemporaries. There wasn't really much nurturing from the elders, but just the sheer thing that I'm now gathering with other people who I know believe the same things I believe was just enough. So,
that was enough. Yeah. Now, good point. So it was good to just, I think we did it. That was a good thing. What was bad is just getting demons cast out to try and fit in. I mean, that's a whole nother story. Can a Christian be possessed by a demon? No, they freaking cannot. But anyway, we found out the hard way.
Trying.
I had to watch my wife get exercised, into all her piercings. Anyway,
I remember that night. It was a dark night.
Yeah, it was a rough night. We tried to fit in charismatic stuff, right? So we were doing the whole thing. Now, where I was going with all of that was that I suppose I've always just been part of a church that's prized the midweek meeting along with the Sunday, and maybe that's just the flavor of the day. And I'm thinking now not the traditional Bible study at church, but more someone's house, a community group. It was obviously huge in the charismatic deal, and so that's just been a staple. It's just been sort of working through that in various forms, and it's looked very differently. I remember one of the things that it came to, as things ebb and flowed, it started off great. You'd sort of have that first love kind of connection with people and form your friends and whatnot. And even that was a challenge, actually. But then as you ebb and flow in the Christian life, go through ups and downs, go to a different sort of community group, different people come along, you find like the novelty wears off. Now you just got to actually legit have your fellowship in Christ, and that I think has probably been the mainstay of how it's actually worked from that point on. And so I found that things I started to struggle with just well after I had adopted to church culture, with things like just awkwardness. You're like, I don't know what to talk about, or I don't feel like it. I'm dog tired. I remember working as a manager of a restaurant, and I'd go to church to our meetings afterwards, and I'd just be so tired. I'd just be over it, and it's so far from that kind of first week of Christianity vibe. And then moving into New Zealand, planting a church, it's been a great blessing to see a church plant develop a kind of community that's so close. And yet it's been also, I think, probably one of the most difficult things for me, in that you're dealing with a lot of, hey, how's it going? New person, awkwardness, new community that really have nothing in common but Jesus, but here we are trying to just make it work. And often it's not romantic, it's not cool, it's not sexy in any way. It's just hi, how's it going? Oh man, what are we going to talk about now? And painful stretches of that. And I think a lot of people, really what I've seen pastorally is like, the people that are committed to Jesus and therefore committed to people are those that will eventually work it through and become really good friends and find a real expression of unity beyond the awkwardness, beyond the church culture thing, no matter what that looks like. And the people that are ultimately there for another reason are, they grow disillusioned at some level, because if you're going for something else, you could probably find a better sense of immediate hype and psych around a hobby club, even though theoretically it shouldn't be that way. We all have Jesus, but do we really? There's some that don't, there's some that do, there's some that are still trying it out, and it makes a fragile environment sometimes. And of course, you got sometimes people that just openly don't believe in Jesus. They're in that community too. They, for whatever reason, you got people. You don't always have the well-balanced, socially adjusted people that might go out and join a hobby group or a community club somewhere, the yachting club, which makes for excellent conversation because everyone wants to be there and make conversation anyway. You have the broken people at church. You have the, people that are really just very shy, along with the people that really just enjoy to hang out with other people naturally. You got introverts, you got extroverts, you got people that are genuinely going through some really difficult times. You got people that are ecstatic, so it's just you're never going to find a blend like that anywhere else. And it doesn't always make for the most immediate, hey, wow, awesome time. And I think the thing that kind of complicates that, and this is where I wanted to go tonight, just in terms of, or today for you, or wherever it is for you listening, it's just that juxtaposed against this talk that we have, which comes from the Bible, about the glory of our fellowship, the awesomeness of our unity, just the excellence of it all.
The church is the outpost of the kingdom,
and we talk it, and we should. It's right. It comes from the Bible, and yet when we go into it, sometimes, we experience. I mean, I just came from a community group meeting that was really good. Okay, I really enjoyed it. It was super chilled, knew everyone really well, no sense of awkwardness. So, but I do remember many times coming back from a community group where it's just, you imagine taking all that sort of hype you put in your mind sometimes, and then what you just experienced, you're like, I don't know, man, I'd rather just eat my arm off than go back there again, And and why is that? How can that be? Is it that we've just stumbled into some false fellowship there? What's going on there, Andre? Tell me.
Well, I mean, you got stuff in the scriptures that talks about bearing with one another in love, and there is no bearing with one another if it's all hunky-dory all the time. Like if it's all just like fist bumps and, hey, it's awesome, it's going so well, and everyone's connecting, and like there's no bearing. Nobody's bearing at that point. The bearing comes at the times when it's like, what on earth was that dude up to tonight? Or like, how come nobody bothered to turn up? Or, like the bearing comes from the difficulties. Or what did they mean when they said that? And why were they so nasty? And, like it just seemed like nobody cared tonight kind of thing. Those are the times when you come and you think, man, that's bearing with one another in love. So I think somebody once came up to me after church, and it wasn't like they were having a go at me because I wasn't actually involved. But after church, I was just talking to one of the other Christians, and they're just saying, sometimes I feel like there's so much more out there. Like a church could be so much more exciting, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that reading Horton and Ordinary has been a real tonic against that kind of talk. Amen. Where he's basically just saying, look, church should be boring sometimes.
Right.
But the boringness of church doesn't actually come about as a result of any of the truths or realities we proclaim. It comes about as a result of our dullness and our sinfulness to apprehend
Yes.
what's going on.
Yeah.
So, the reality is, when you have church, you don't just have one sinful person, you have multiple sinful people all piled in together, who very often don't have, like at our last baptism class thing, we had a 60-year-old forklift driver and a 24-year-old solicitor in the same group.
Yeah.
Now what does a 24-year-old solicitor and a 64-year-old forklift driver have in common?
I mean, they have, here's the thing. They have Jesus in common if they're both Christians, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, I mean, that they might have made a credible profession or not. There is that possible dynamic, because certainly both come to church. Both of those groups within the category of those that have made a credible profession. Who knows if that was in fact credible? There's just no way to tell. That's only God knows. And you have those two groups as well. Then let's just narrow it down to those who only have made a credible profession and are indeed Christians. Then you have the way in which at what point of Christianity are they? And how much has it started to influence their personality, so to speak? I mean, someone who's been walking as a Christian, you can tell that guy that has loved Jesus, who's 80 years old and is just one sanctified dude, versus the guy who honestly is, giving carnal Christianity a run for its money, just sort of just testing that theory to the limits, Yeah,
the guy who comes to the church picnic, with 2 6-packs of beers and has every intention of getting through them all.
Exactly. So, and just then you've got the fact that, when you become a Christian, God doesn't press the reset button on your brain, and you don't have this monolithic sort of attitude. You got radically different attitudes that even if they're at the same point in their journey, so to speak, it still might look very, very different, and very different personalities that get affected. And then, there's just the ability that one has to actually make conversation around the thing that you love. You get some people, I've seen this over and over again. I'm constantly being a talker. That's what I do. It's coming out of me all the time. I can't imagine a life where that's not happening. So if I'm excited about it, everybody knows about it, man. I'm just not one of the strong and silent types, just everyone must know what I'm going through. If I'm suffering, I'm a drama queen. Everyone is getting in on that suffering. They're all praying for me.
You will weep with me who weeps.
They're holding my hand. I need the support. If I'm feeling angry, like I'm letting everyone know, like everyone's just always in my world, right? But I concerts, I meet people and they're going through profound joy, like the most amazing joy, and they will not say one word about it, and that's just not because it's not sin. It's just who they are. They're just super quiet, super shy, super reserved. They can find it. That's fine for them to just express it in other ways, or feel it without expressing it in a verbal sort of way with the stranger. And so you got that kind of radical difference in terms of personality type. You got someone who's going through pain. They won't say anything, but it'll affect their personality. So anyways, you got all these dynamics that are just going to be there in every Christian gathering at some level. And so you have to factor that in. And it does not discount the reality of your having something in common with another believer in greater measure than you could ever have anything else in common with anyone. But that doesn't automatically mean that everyone gets to talk about it in the same way with the same ease at the same point. You've got things that are working there as well. Yeah.
I think also like things that don't help. When you take into account the mixture, if you're not going for like the homogenous unit principle, where you're just all going for like young adults, which we shouldn't be doing, where a church should not be an homogenous.
Have you heard people say homogeneous?
I've heard that, and I've always thought, why do they say it wrong?
Why do they say it that way? I mean, I haven't Googled yet, but I'm going with homogeneous.
I'm sticking with homogeneous. I can't change it now.
I just hope you haven't got it from me.
No. It's the standard.
Is that a British thing?
It's the standard British way of saying it, bro.
That's enough for me right there.
The only context in which I've ever heard homogeneous has been in a church context where we talk about the homogeneous unit.
It's good enough for me. That's all
so
I ever need.
I've never heard it anyway. It's like my daughter was asking me, Daddy, her word for the week at school was abundant. And I'm like, I can't think of a context to use that word outside of God's abundant love. I've never heard the word used in anything outside of a Third Day song,
Right. Totally.
So added to the complication of like, you just got very different people at church, which is part of its glory, because you got every tribe and tongue, every nation, every culture, every people all gathered together. And local churches do reflect that insofar as their area reflects that. So obviously you can't expect someone, in rural England to reflect the same sort of cosmopolitan nature as London. But generally speaking, churches should reflect the diversity of the gospel in some way, whether it's through ages or through ethnicities or whatever.
Yeah.
And that adds complications. And then, like you say, you've got spiritual maturity that adds complications that makes it more difficult. But then in addition to that, there are things kind of a part of Christian culture that also make things difficult. So you've got various Christian traditions, and I want to say they are traditions. They're just like different kind of ethics or ways of doing things that are appropriate, ways of speaking and dressing that some Christians feel are appropriate and aren't. And so there's the kind of tension where that some Christians are trying to basically make you middle class because they associate Christianity or true Christian behavior with being middle class. Right. So, and it's a big thing in the UK, talking about how to break that, because most of the evangelical churches are in middle class areas. Because it's going to be very awkward for people in different sort of socioeconomic backgrounds or different cultures
to imbibe the culture,
to join in with that.
Yeah.
So you got those sorts of awkwardnesses as well, and I think that part of the problem and what makes these things all the more profound is that actually when we go to church, we're not very good at keeping the conversation to the things that we are united on. So, like, in other words, small talk can be painful at churches precisely because of that diversity. Yeah. But
it can be all that you have. You've got the periphery small talk thing, which, everyone, the whole idea with small talk is that it kind of works across the board. That's why it works. You're like, hey, what's going on? Well, it's hot today. Oh, totally. Very hot. No, it's cold. Oh, wait, yes, it might be cold. Okay, that gets you like, what, a minute. And everyone can relate to that, whether you're a truck driver or a university professor. And they can have that conversation. But then you're supposed to go from that into something that is slightly more deep. And then if you're going to talk about either truck driving or, nuclear physics, then you're going to be in trouble, because that's when you're not going to feel anything. You're going to feel that separation. And I agree. That's where you need to almost be encouraged to carve out that thing. Just jump over those things that perhaps you might want to normally go into when you're talking to your other truck drivers or university professor friends. That's a very lame sort of example, but
don't try and force the commonality. Like, if you've got nothing in common outside of the gospel with the person you're talking to, like, time, you will develop a relationship with that person anyway.
Yeah.
But don't try and like force it. Just go to the thing you both are interested in. But for some reason, we're so slow to do that. So we talk about the weather. We ask, "Oh, how are you?"
Yeah.
You get a kind of generic, interaction there. But like what you learn when you start learning a language, and you get to the basic greeting and the "how are you," and then you don't know any more about that language.
You're like, ooh.
Nkosi kakulu, and then that's it. And then you got nothing else.
Yeah.
And I think that actually, why don't Christians? We need to be better at like talking about the sermon.
Yeah. Yeah.
talking about a struggle you're going through in the gospel, asking for someone to help you pray,
It's interesting because I think this is where, at one level, it's like you want to be just realistic about those basic sort of expectations, I suppose, and just keep these complexities in mind. But yeah, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be encouraged to try and work at it, and years where we were in this zone, how can you improve that, how can you accelerate that experience? Because at one level, this is the good news. In fact, we say this all the time. The way, here's what you're committing to as a member when you join. You're committing to awkward Sunday after awkward Sunday until someday it stops being awkward at a very genuine level, because you've been awkward together so many times, but you're committing to that other person, to be awkward with them, and as they're committing to be awkward with you.
And that point will come, whether it's in glory or whether it's in this life now, that point will come.
And often it comes after a few Sundays, after a few Sundays of just being super awkward together. I mean, this is how it works anyway. Just there's something about that experience on its own right that you share that then moves you into the next zone. You just sort of, you've done the worst part together in some sense, and it just it facilitates a truly deep friendship at the end. It's not a fake. I think people probably experience when they go to work. They maybe it gets at a much more rapid pace. You meet new work colleagues, you don't know them. You basically got a framework in which to converse. It gets awkward, but it's very soon, because it's day after day. You're in that place where through that dull awkwardness, you're in a good space. The thing about that, though, is that you don't have their commitment towards you. You don't have a commitment towards them. What makes church so awesome, even though it's slower in that you might only get to see them once or twice a week, and not get that accelerated sort of connected experience. It reminds me a lot of a marriage, I suppose, a church covenant and that sort of thing plays into that. But in the sense that when you're married, there's a freedom in that. It's think about dating versus marriage. There's this constant on the edge when you're dating. It could go either way, and whether I'm thinking now of pagan sinful dating or courtship, whatever. The point is that you're not in that safe zone because you haven't covenanted together. Whereas once you're married, there's just obviously everyone's trying their best still, but there's a safety that undergirds you in that even when you're just when they realize what a schmuck you are, and they're not going to throw you away. They've seen the worst of you, and they still love you. And there's a great sort of comfort in that in marriage. In church, when you get that true fellowship thing going on, it doesn't look obviously sexy. Wow, what a cool group! I want to be part of that group. Oh my goodness, someone's phoning me. It's Dad. Should we bring him in on the conversation?
Yeah, Dad. Yeah. Dad, come on.
I won't do it. So it's not like, wow, look at that amazing, cool group. I want to be part of it. But what happens is that you when you're awkward with that, you fail at the conversation that Sunday. There you are. You're standing with your coffee. You know how it goes. Hey, how's it going? Good. And you wanted to talk about Jesus. You wanted to bring up the sermon. You just failed. You just straight up failed. You sounded stupid. You made it even more awkward. It's even worse when you're the pastor and you do this like 10 times in a row, So there's that. And you just, whatever. There's such a freedom in knowing that it's okay if you've committed to their awkwardness and their failures, and they've committed to yours. And you're willing to do that again and again until one day you don't have to even worry about it, because that's how closely knit you are. And I've experienced that genuinely at church. It takes years sometimes it takes weeks, but the end point is different from any other kind of friendship that you have, because it sort of supersedes the conversation you're able to have by a mutual commitment that you presuppose.
Yeah, and you don't want to kind of give the impression that to grow into, now Dad's phoning me.
Sorry, Dad, we're podcasting, Dad. If you're seeing this right now.
Dad. You don't want to give the impression that basically in order to be a mature Christian, you have to be an extrovert or like a natural conversationalist. You can be an introvert and be a mature Christian, but you do have to just find a way as an introvert to to be part of the church.
Yeah. So commit to going
and love the church.
Yeah.
But it's like you say, any families like this. Any family.
Yes.
The family dynamic is weird. Like you've got family that you get on well with, and then you've got like the weird cousin that nobody really gets on with, but they have to be there because they're part of the family. And like everyone's got that dynamic, and auntie, like we are used to these sorts of family dynamics, and so when you come into church, you are coming together as a family. And I think that reminding yourself of this, that you're not coming to like a social club or a nightclub. You're not coming into something that's sexy. You're coming into something that's safe. You're coming into family. And that is a different dynamic. Your expectations are different. And, like, sure, like, there might be some tense moments and awkward moments, but that's all part of normal family life in this life now. But
yeah, I think what we're saying right now is super important, because you're going to have terrible, terrible moments of awesome, glorious church fellowship, right? That's the thing. You're going to have so many shockingly bad, like not refreshing, awesome moments of glorious church, experience and foretaste of heaven. And that's the paradox. And if you're not ready for that, if you're not equipped for that theologically, if you're expecting something else, it's gonna be kind of like a health and wealth prosperity thing, in that there you are naming it and claiming it all day long and just getting suffering and trial, and then wondering what went wrong with your faith. I mean, it's that level. Sometimes I've seen people walk out because they're disillusioned with the church, but their reason for being disillusioned really stems back to this. They came into it with false expectations to begin with. And
and that's so true, not only for the subject, but for everything in the Christian life.
I suppose, yeah.
Like when you read the Bible, the Bible is glorious, but your experience is not always going to be glorious.
That's a great.
When you pray, prayer is a glorious thing, but you're invited into the communion of God. To communicate to the Godhead, and yet that our experience of that is not always glorious. When you are sharing the gospel with someone else, you are doing a glorious thing. You are literally imparting the word of life to someone, yet the experience of that sometimes seems more like the fragrance of death. Like it's just the whole thing is about measuring the reality in our experience. And it's very, very helpful to it's almost like you have to put, you get those kind of X-ray goggles or whatever, or infrared goggles, and they kind of give you a different picture of things for a while. And you have to keep putting those on as a Christian, saying, I know that this gathering of Christians appears very sort of dull and unimpressive and uninspirational, but then you put your Bible reality goggles back on, and you look around the room and you see that all of these people around you are going to be glorious saints in heaven one day, are part of God's trophy cabinet for his glory, are going to be your brothers and sisters for all eternity, are going to be purged of all their sin, are so loved by God the Father that he sent God the Son into the world to die for them. You put those reality changing goggles on, and then you suddenly see your brothers and sisters in a different way. They are precious, and one day you will stand alongside them in the very presence of God, giving praise and worship to God with those brothers and sisters, standing beside you, dressed in the glorious robes of righteousness. Like it's just, but it doesn't look like that.
No.
When you go to the prayer meeting, when you go to the Bible study, when you go to church, it doesn't always look like that.
I was thinking as you were talking, I mean, Jesus, the King of Kings, is going through his time of humiliation as a peasant from Galilee. The reason Dawkins bickers so much about Christianity is because look how petty. Who would follow a peasant from Galilee? And that's it. He was born in a manger, and yet angels proclaimed his glory. So we've got this thing in Christianity that I think is helpful to bring out, because I think one of the big, talking to my skeptical sort of devil's advocate self, I think one of the things that I have actually wrestled with in the past, and I'll say in a second what helped me to get out of this, but I think one thing we could often be guilty of is we can go to, let's say, a terrible meeting, or just really have everything we've been talking about now, not the most glorious of times. And we come out of it and we're thinking, okay, what was all that about? Feeling a bit disillusioned, and we try and and then we'll remind ourselves of these things. But then the sort of thought that comes back on you is, am I just making excuses for what is actually just lame at the end of the day? Actually, this thing just is dying a slow death, because honestly, that's how it will feel for seasons and years even. And depending on where you are and what fellowship we're talking in, at the end of the day, that's a very real possibility. Now, you are going to have to wrestle with, are you just trying to spin this yarn for yourself? Are you trying to theologize your way around a really just brutal situation that you actually just need to take a hard, long look at? Well, I think the thing, when you relate it to things like we've been talking about, like, the incarnation, for crying out loud, the humiliation of Christ and as the King of Glory, the reality of, as you say, prayer, Bible reading, every single component, that what that does is it focuses it allows it to you to say, well, if I'm gonna throw this away, I'm throwing it all away. Am I willing to throw it all away though? And typically, I think we're able to see that we're not. There is a very real purpose in that veil during the incarnation, and so there, as the King goes, so goes the church. There is a reason for this time of humility before glory, and so embrace it. And we're not theologizing, unless you're willing to throw everything away. We're not theologizing. This is real.
Well, this is really the heart of what it means to be a two-age sojourner.
Amen.
Because you're recognizing that you are sojourning through this world, and your experience and the reality are not going to match up, but you're sojourning with a view in mind to see, or to know that one day your experience and the reality will align.
Yeah,
but at the moment, we're exiles. This is not, things are not as they are meant to be. We're traveling through, we're waiting, very much waiting for our hopes to be fulfilled.
We're talking some pilgrim theology. That's what
pilgrim theology, man. And do you know what is helpful for me, though, is that prayer, or the two prayers, actually, in Ephesians, that Paul prays. The first prayer in chapter 1 being that the eyes of your heart would be enlightened,
right?
So that you would know the hope to which you've been called, and the power that raised Christ from the dead.
Right.
So he's kind of saying, he's just gone on about, you're blessed with every spiritual blessing in Christ. You're redeemed, you're forgiven, you're elect, you're predestined. Like the boom, it's just no punctuation, just 14 verses of sheer glorious praise.
Yeah.
And then he prays and he says, I really hope that you know that.
Yeah.
And I think that it seems like his whole intention with Ephesians is to get them to see the invisible reality of what has been done for them.
Yeah.
Precisely because they're living in Ephesus. They're surrounded by the temple of Artemis. They've got all these great, big, worldly,
obviously glorious
symbols of power and glory that overshadow anything that they're experiencing. I don't know, like 12 of them in this little upper room or something like that. It's not impressive. And so Paul is exactly saying, look, I'm praying this for you so that you would get just how blessed you are.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be a good prayer for us to pray for ourselves before you go to church. God, open the eyes of my heart. Let me know. Help me to see what I can't see. But also pray for other people. Pray for your church that they would see it. Especially guys who are like
struggling with this.
So get your tulipry out. And go through the prayers of Paul. Come
on. All right, now added to that, to round this up, because I see the time we're getting on there, but it's been a great conversation. Pilgrim theology, hashtag. One of the things you mentioned, Ordinary, Michael Horton, he, I know, draws on this book a lot. This is Bonhoeffer's book, Life Together.
Yes.
I don't know if you've ever read it. Yeah. Oh boy. If you haven't read this book, you got to read it. And it really just nails down everything.
Don't read Cost of Discipleship. Read that one.
That's right. Yeah. This is the better book. I think so as well.
So much better.
Oh man. Anyway, let me just read you a little snippet to give, and it's along the lines of what we've been saying. But there's more. I mean, I'm tempted to read a whole bunch here, but let me just Let's give you this one. He says, the more genuine and the deeper our community becomes, the more will everything else between us recede. The more clearly and purely will Jesus Christ and his work become the one and only thing that is vital between us. We have one another only through Christ. But through Christ, we do have one another wholly and for all eternity. That dismisses once and for all every clamorous desire for something more. One who wants more than what Christ has established does not want Christian brotherhood. Oh, there it is. He is looking for some extraordinary social experience, which he has not found elsewhere. He is bringing muddled and impure desires into Christian brotherhood. Just at this point, Christian brotherhood is threatened most often, at the very start, by the greatest danger of all, the danger of being poisoned at its root, the danger of confusing Christian brotherhood with some wishful idea of religious fellowship, of confounding the natural desire of the devout heart for community with the spiritual reality of Christian brotherhood. So he says the number one thing that's got to happen when you come in is, in some ways, you have to be totally disillusioned. That's like the best thing that could ever happen to you day one, because it kills off all that otherwise religious devotion that could really get you into real trouble on this. And then make sure where this real brotherhood lies and where this real fellowship lies. And then, I mean, once you figure that out, and that's really what helped me out so much when I was wrestling through this at certain points, once that's in place, you're good to go. Bear with one another in love. Enjoy the experience of true, obvious blessing when it comes, but know that you're moving in this way that it's bigger than those things. We have Christ.
Amen, brother.
Amen. Let's play the jingle, brother.
Let's do it.
Did we play the jingle to open? I don't think we did.
Did we not?
I don't think we did.
No, I don't think we did.
All right. Well, then what I'll do is put that right in front of the video. And if you're wondering why it was right in front of the video, now you have your answer.
Now you know. Because you listened to the end, you found out the truth.
But we will certainly play out well.